Welcome everyone to this Heart and Soul series, which begins with Joanna Macy, who has graciously donated her time to us today. And just wanted to mention a couple of things about Transition US. We're a national hub for the Transition Network, and we produce a number of webinars, maestro calls, and conference calls like this. And what we ask, these have all been free of charge, but we ask that you consider donating to Transition US, and we have a donation button at the top of our website. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest of this Heart and Soul series, Joanna Macy. And Joanna Macy is an eco-philosopher. She's a scholar of Buddhism. She has studied general systems theory, deep ecology. She's a respected voice in peace movements, justice, and ecology movements. She interweaves her scholarship with 4 decades of activism and has created groundbreaking theoretical framework for personal and social change, which I'm sure most of you are aware of. She's written numerous books on the subject of despair, personal power, Buddhism and general systems theory, and just a number of wonderful books that deeply touch the whole person. She's also offered hundreds of workshops around the world, and many thousands of people have taken these and participated in her workshops and her trainings. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Joanna, and she'll be talking for a time, possibly 20 minutes or so. And so if you could just, no need to raise your hands during that point, but we will call on you to raise your hands after, and if you have any questions or comments, and then we'll put you on live mic so that we can all hear you, and then we'll enter a dialogue with Joanna. So without further ado, Joanna.
Hi, everybody. This is a unique experience for me. I'm imagining myself sitting in a large room in the dark with a lot of you, or us connected as a big neural net with invisible strands of intelligence interweaving us in the web. So I am bringing you, with the power of my imagination, I'm bringing you present to me, and look forward to hearing your voices shortly. First, I thought I'd share what I have recently been finding helpful in helping people get in touch with their desire to give themselves as fully as they can to the healing of our world, really taking risks and stepping out into action. So I'm drawing on what I've been experiencing here on the West Coast, on the East Coast where I was in May, in Europe from where I've just come back. And there is a absolutely amazing sense of allegiance to the living earth that is welling up in people, and that they're a tremendous readiness to be heard. So I've become ever more grateful, and when I meet with people, as you know probably, it's in the context of the Work That Reconnects. And I have found this, the processes and especially the dynamic movement and certain assumptions that underlie the Work That Reconnects to be extremely valuable. So that people, when they choose to come and take part in the work, they don't need to be told how bad things are. I bet you're realizing that. This moment this historical moment is doing us the favor of we don't need to exert great efforts in pointing out the inadequacies of the dominant economic model or the industrial growth society that is being demonstrated in spades on all sides, whether it's ecological, military, economic, and of course the great danger is when in a time of collapse like this, gradual but seemingly irreversible collapse, that people shut down. So I'm very grateful to the Work That Reconnects to deal and quite openly in how the natural tendency on the part of many people in this hyper-individualized society to isolate themselves and shut down, close down, because it all seems so overwhelming. The families losing their homes, the children dropping below the poverty line, the dying of the Gulf of Mexico, whole species tipping into extinction, the obscene expenses and arrogance demonstrated in our war making illegally without in Iraq, Afghanistan, into Pakistan, the risks involved, you name it. And the fact that we don't have a political system that seems to be in any way responsive to the majority of the population. So what I'm finding is that if the important thing is to get people together, you've been finding that out, so that they can experience that they're not alone in their responses, in their deep inner responses of grief and outrage, dread, feelings of powerlessness. And what I love about the Work That Reconnects is that it helps people to express these. So that's what people need the most, as many of you have discovered and know as well as I, that people want to hear the authority of their own voice. And that is, and at the same time, as they can speak and be listened to, they find their solidarity and overcome that isolation, and they can discover that they're experts. They're experts on what it's like to be alive consciously in a system that is a runaway system or on overshoot or running out of control, demolishing and destroying living systems of our planet and shredding the communities. So to give people, and for those of you in Buddhist practice, that's certainly echoed in the Four Noble Truths, you know, the first one being, face it, there is suffering, and you can be freed from the delusions of thinking that you deserve to be the only one around, or this nation deserves to be the only one in history that enjoys special privileges to be exempt from failure and suffering. It's also the organizing strategy that I found so moving to me in the Buddhist community development movement of Sarvodaya in Sri Lanka, where they would be going into villages and always begin with what they called family gatherings, where they allowed people to not be listening to the haranguing of politicians or foreign agencies or World Bank officials, but to tell the truth about what they experience in their own lives, in their villages. And this is a great, paradoxically, this is very empowering, because that's what they know. There's nothing more empowering than the ability to speak the truth and be heard. So I bet that some of you have been using some of the processes of the Work That Reconnects, like open sentences and so forth, to help people be heard. I've also been very moved by and feeling validated by the grounding in this notion, this concept, recognition rather of the revolutionary nature of our time, that we are all involved in a huge, absolutely necessary transition that's as big as the agricultural revolution or the industrial revolution, and this third revolution of our human journey, the transition from the industrial growth society to a life-sustaining society, is epical, and it is indeed an enormous privilege, as I increasingly realize it, along with so many colleagues in the work, to be alive at this time and to have a chance to pit my heart and soul and body and intellect and hands to this effort, which requires all we've ever learned of community and courage. And it feeds us that. As we take a step into the great turning, we find ourselves being nourished afresh by community that is discovering the sweet beauty of human relationship, and as people bond together to just sit down and talk frankly, and to celebrate the fact that they care, and to be grateful for the fact that there is something like the transition town culture that is here for us to use. How grateful we can be for whether it's Kinsale or Totnes or any of the communities that are populating the planet now of transition culture, that these are a great web that we can come to life in and feel part of. So the two things in there, I was just talking about the great turning. One is to see the magnificence of this moment in our human journey, and then to see it in a larger context of time. Just seeing the great turning invites us to see its relevance to completing the dreams of our ancestors, but also to making a future possible for the coming generations. And that invites, and some of you I know have been doing some of the deep time work, like the double circle with the future beings. This sense I find growing of the recognition of the future ones. You know, as one of my teachers, Sister Rosalie Bertel, the radiologist, says, every being who will ever live on Earth is alive now. Yes, they are. Where? In our ovaries and gonads and in our DNA. The future is in us, and so the choices we make now, the decisions we make, will have everything to do with whether they have a chance to be born on a planet that can sustain them and to preserve the fertility and beauty that we can still taste here. So what I have been finding, my friends, is that this growing sense of the larger context of time, seeing that what the adventure that we're involved in, even this minute, on this Wednesday morning, that we are holding the future is with us, and that does a couple of things. One is that it means that we're committed to something that we're not dependent on seeing the results within our particular lifetime, because there's so much that has been building toward this. You know, this crisis now has not just has its roots in the last decades. It's been years of ways we've been thinking as humans, of the ways that we can exploit the earth as if it were just a cupboard of goodies, a supply house or a sewer for our waste, that we can turn now and see that it's really a living being. This is a living system that we're part of. And as we begin to let the earth work through us, we have a lot of old habits to overcome and to decondition. So we're not going to see some of the most important results of our actions in our lifetime. But that makes, if our commitment is to the future, that makes hardly any difference. And then the great reward of that, of course, is that we are liberated from needing to see the results of our own behaviors and of our own actions. And that is a tremendous liberation. It's like what Gandhi talked about, being freed from the results of the actions. So you get a kind of companionship with the future ones and that kind of liberation, and as well as a solidarity with the people of your own generation, each other, you guys, us, living together now, that we're taking risks now. And we do that with tremendous patience, knowing that some folks in our communities are really dependent on an old way of seeing things, or they're really afraid to speak out, or they're really too desperate in their use of time to scrambling to just preserve their families, to be able to respond as to our invitations. So you put out the invitation, you invite people, you gather people around you, and you simply proceed. You assume that there will be people who aren't immediately ready yet. And then as we do that, as we listen to each other, using the Work That Reconnects and other common sense ways, they're beautiful ways of, some of my great teachers, the Quakers, among others, have listening projects that have shown the power of this. Also in the empathy circles of nonviolent communication, that what gets liberated is not just our feelings of concern for the planet with their heavy dose of despair and fear and outrage, but what gets liberated is our energy and our intellects. So that as I look back over this year of meeting with people, I feel an exhilaration, racing of the blood to see how when people open their eyes together, their minds open as well. So that although you use the term heart and soul, it's really what I don't want to see any kind of dichotomy between heart and soul and our wits and wisdom as in working together. I've also been struck by people's requests for, now that the times are hard, for some kind of daily practice and to keep them going. And that there are all kinds of, we can craft it ourselves, we can draw on the spiritual traditions that are meaningful to us from our own ancestral lineage or from our own lives, what's made sense, but to find some way to quiet down every day and center in, to cherish our intention and our motivation, and to feed it, and to remember the future ones and each other who are out of sight. We say some of us have adopted some intentions, common intentions that we simply recite to ourselves in the morning that help us to hold strong. And then what these do is, and I'll close now these remarks, but it helps us And that has been a kind of new unfolding for me in the last years, more recent times, is an increasing respect for intention itself. You know, I used to think that what mattered most was my getting things done, my effectiveness in producing results, and that I took for granted my motivation, the fact that I cared. And that's gotten reversed. I've come to see, on the one hand, you can never tell the results by the nature of open systems, of our interdependent interweaving in the web of life. There are a lot of the most important consequences, ripples going out from what you say, do, or think. You're not going to know. And just as the people who have made, some of the people who've made the biggest effects on your own life, they don't know that. So you don't know it. And also that caring, that motivation is the most precious thing. In Buddhism, that's called the bodhicitta. They think of it as a little flame. Think of it as a flame in your heart-mind. Your mind is in your heart, and there's like a flame there of your caring for the welfare of your planet, for your brother, sister beings. That is of inestimable beauty, that deserves our reverence, because the awful thing to contemplate is the possibility of your losing that caring. It's sort of like in the New Testament when Jesus says, you know, if the salt loses its savor, wherewith shall we be seasoned? If our caring loses its power, what shall be guiding us? So at any moment, particularly in discouragement, just treasure the fact that you care, and that is that motivation will guide you. That motivation will sustain you. That motivation will help you take the next step, because it includes, see, it's not for any one of you on this call. Are you here? Are you sitting there by your phones doing it for your own advancement, for your own profit? It's for the sake of this exquisite web of life. And that is the great shift in consciousness, the great turning, what feeds us all. Oh, and one other thing that I've noticed, and then I will close, is that in the great turning, I always love to really make clear that there are these different dimensions of it that are equally important and mutually supporting. They're the holding actions to slow down the destruction of the industrial growth society, whether it's by political, legal, regulatory actions, or civil disobedience, direct action and blockades or boycotts. So that's what so many of us have thought activism was. And then there's the second dimension, which is building new structures. And Transition Towns is particularly geared for helping us retool and restructure our local societies for a post-petroleum age. And it unharnesses, what's the word I want? It releases a huge ingenuity, as is so beautiful to see, popping up everywhere. And equally important, but that's not the great turning, that's not enough for the great turning, because those new structures and ways of doing things are not going to be able to survive unless they're deeply rooted in our values, in our ways we see, in how we see ourselves related to the living earth and to each other. And that's the shift in consciousness. Now, as this understanding of the multifold aspects of the great turning, we see that we don't need to argue over which is the most important activity. They're all important. And we don't need to try to persuade people that our issue is more significant than someone else's. It really allows us to create space for huge diversity, which builds the power of the movement. and releases us from thinking that we have to proselytize for our own favorite issue. Okay, I've been babbling on. I see it's been 25 minutes. So I'm going to eagerly look forward to your comments and learn from you and your questions too.
Joanna, thank you so much. This is Caroline. And I wanted to invite people who have comments or questions to press 1 on their keypad. And while people are assembling themselves to do that, Joanna, we received some questions by email. So let me ask you one of those, and then people are putting their hands up. James Samuel, I'll be next to you, just so you know. We had a question from Barbara Green, and she was wanting to know of any tips for really keeping the energy up and regathering our energy after working on the transition work. And I think you've answered that, with the mention of daily practice and just a number of things that you were talking about, the empathy circles and speaking the truth within groups of people.
And I think, too, what I didn't mention, but my colleague John Seed from Australia, who does the Work That Reconnects and Councils of All Beings, deep ecology work around the world, he also expresses himself, says very clearly, I need to do despair work regularly. I need to cry. I need to express my outrage because that clears the tubes, so to speak. You can't, living in our dominant culture, you hear absolutely catastrophic news, and you're expected to go out and behave normally at work or around your neighborhood or with the family. You can't just dissolve. So to have a group that you can offer workshops and practices of the Work That Reconnects, I find you don't do that just once and for all. It's not a catharsis when you do despair work. It just helps you be not afraid of the suffering of our world and to realize that it is natural. These feelings are natural and wholesome, and they need, it's healthy for us to be able to express them. So that is one thing that I found is really helpful in keeping me and many of my colleagues going.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to turn to James Samuel next, and then it will be Maggie Seeley and Rains Cohen. So go ahead, James. You had a question?
Kia ora. Thank you, Joanna. I really just want to express some deep, heartfelt gratitude because your work has touched so many people. I have some very dear friends, Finn Mackesy and Daniel Napier, who have used your work extensively in New Zealand, and they've opened many hearts many times to great effect. And your last words for the ones that really touched me was that it's okay, it's necessary that the feel the suffering is a necessary and ongoing part of this work. So thank you for that. And this is wonderful preparation because for me, because in a few hours I jump in a car and drive down to the middle of North Island of New Zealand to the heart of the country. I've been invited to speak at the Heart Politics Gathering, which is an annual gathering of wonderful people who are coming together in service to each other and to the country and to the world and to this web of beings, or web of life. So gratitude is really all I want to express to you. Thank you, Joanna.
Oh, James, would you give my greetings, if you feel like it, to the people at Heart Politics, That's saying, I've been to the gathering in Australia, but not the ones in New Zealand. And when you say feeling the suffering, how important that is, and then you discover, of course, and we remind people that the suffering does not come from any kind of inadequacy or pathology or neurosis on our part, but that suffering speaks from our capacity to feel the suffering of our world springs from our interconnectedness and our profound caring, so that we find that our pain for the world and our love for the world are inseparable. They're like two sides of the same coin. It's sort of like when Thich Nhat Hanh was asked, this Vietnamese Zen master, what's the most important thing we can do for society? And he answered, he didn't give any strategy. He didn't say, run for office or go get on the barricades or go sit on your zafu. He just said, the most important thing is to listen within your own heart to the sounds of the earth crying. And then you realize as you open, as you're not afraid to feel the suffering of our earth, that you're opening to new, vaster dimensions of your own being that can bring you the power to do what needs to be done.
Thank you. Yes. Deep gratitude, and yes, gratitude is another one of those extraordinarily powerful feelings, which has given me enormous strength over the years to carry on. But thank you.
So well.
I wanted to invite Maggie Seeley to speak now with question or comment, and then it'll be Rains and then Margaret. Maggie? Maybe Maggie, you're on mute or something, but I'll come back to you. Rains?
We've actually got more than a dozen of us here at the Brower Center in Berkeley, and Aaron Lamer from Bay Localize had the question.
Hi, Joanna. This is Aaron, and thank you so much for all your work. I wanted to touch upon one of the dimensions you were speaking of earlier, in particular, consciousness change. And I guess I'm becoming increasingly concerned that this age of material abundance that we're now leaving is going to be seen as someone else's fault by a lot of people who are going to be facing increasing material deprivation, and that there's going to be a tendency for us to just want to blame other people, especially those who are not in privileged enough positions to understand the complexities of what's going on in terms of resource decline, peak oil, etc. And so I'm wondering if you have thoughts about how to change that consciousness. I mean, obviously our politicians aren't going to be running on a platform of let's get ready for material scarcity.
But they're not.
I want to keep that open. I want to hear what your thoughts are about how we can, as messengers for the future, put that consciousness out there about how we can prepare for this and prepare others for that in a way that's enticing and not frightening.
Well, that's a very significant point, Aaron, because we can very easily be triggered into scapegoating and blaming and feuding. It seems to me, and sometimes it helps just to point this out to people. When we're faced with massive collective dangers or suffering, misfortune, our response, we have a choice between two alternatives. One is that we can let this challenge, this collective challenge, bring us into stronger solidarity, unite us in greater trust and collaboration. Or we can use it to turn on each other to blame each other, to foster division. Now, that's, you know that because you're raising this question. What I'm saying is that when you find simple ways of saying that, that can really break through. You know, you can find simpler ways even than I just did. We're standing at a point where we can go toward blame or we can go toward solidarity. And so when people can see that, there is, because we are living parts of a living planet, because we have been brought to this historical moment by 4 billion years of evolution on this living planet, there is in us tremendous forces that want life to go on, and that there is the fact of our interexistence or interbeing is a reality. We just want to help people realize that consciously, but our bodies know it, our hearts know it as we weep for the Gulf of Mexico and so forth. So people are going to be breeding, then let me just say, people are going to be doing, making hay financially and politically by playing on people's fears and directing those fears against each other. And this has been true now, at least for the last decade. And so there is nothing that I have found, or maybe I found that the greatest motivation for me in continuing the work that reconnects is to help us be less vulnerable to fear, not to be afraid of the fear itself, not to be afraid of of course we're scared, so not to be afraid, but we can be afraid of what's going to happen to our families without blaming each other. And I think you've touched on an area of that's extremely important in this time, because really when it comes down to it, when you let people talk and when you let them be listened to, what they come around to is what they want most of all is solidarity. What they want most of all is community and the sense of being held there, more than they want physical comfort. That's at any rate my conviction.
Thank you.
I wanted to see if Maggie Seeley, if you're there with us now. Maggie? Okay, we'll try that later.
Well, I have a point that Maggie wrote in. Shall I speak to that?
Why don't you, Joanna, and then we'll go to Margaret next.
It was about some key points in the transition training, and especially information in relation to the economic meltdown. And I have found that it's very freeing for people to just get a recognition of the suicidal nature, self-destructive nature of the industrial growth society, that growth economics is its own worst enemy, and that the system is bound to, like any open system which tries to maximize one variable, in this case corporate profits and market share, immediately goes out of balance and goes into exponentially widening oscillations, and we're seeing that. So that when we see that the dominant economy is one that is, as David Korten says, self-destructive, self-devouring, he calls it a suicide economy, then we realize we don't need to go attack it so much as unmask it. We don't need to conquer it. We don't need to defeat it. It's doing that job itself. And we don't need to demonize the people who are caught in its institutions. They're not our enemies. they are often enslaved, in bondage to these structures, be they political or corporate, military or industrial, and that the real forces that we're doing battle with are greed, hatred, and delusion. And so you can look at the economic meltdown that way, and it relates to Aaron's question, that we don't need to blame. We can deliver ourselves and each other from blame of human beings. Yes, let's blame the system. It's not flesh and blood. It's built up of certain agreements that have been made that cause an unconscionable economic inequality and suffering of all beings. Period.
Thank you, Joanna. Wanted to turn to Margaret with your question or comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you?
Margaret, go ahead.
I don't know how to. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. So in the talk, Joanna, I liked what you said about like all the different ways you can be active, and I've been involved both in the Awakening the Dreamer and the transition movement. But to me, I'm conflicted because the Awakening the Dreamer means you have to have people give like 4 to 6 hours at a time to go to a seminar, and I don't feel like there's enough action in it. And I live in New York, and it's really been hard to get anybody interested in the transition movement here. Everybody's very busy. So I'm wondering if you have, well, I'm sure you already do, but like I would love to run some groups or start some groups where people can just come, but I don't know how to attract them, like a name or everybody's very busy in New York, even though they care.
Yeah. Well, your group doesn't have to be very large. You could just pull together 1, 2, 3 other people and put your heads together, and you might do some of the practices of the work that reconnects together, or then some, if it's satisfying and if it's supportive, new ideas will come and new people will come, I think. I'm very aware, I must say, Margaret, of how the system now in the economic breakdown is accelerating time and making people very caught up on in the squirrel cage. But don't try to, I would just ask you, personal invitation, don't limit it in, don't think it has to be a large group. Do some processes together, or sit down and share even some of the kind of practices that are listed in Coming Back to Life, open sentences. Look at something together, follow your own heart, and so that you are there's even talking with 2, 3 other people is synergistic. There are new thoughts that arise, new steps that can be taken. There are churches too, or whatever your faith tradition is, are temples that can often be in existing organizations that would be happy for you to bolster their program, their morale, their activity by offering something under their auspices, so to speak.
Right, I'd have to think of a name though, because to say transition or something like that, nobody knows what that means.
Yeah, well, the name of the book I'm working on right now is How to Face the Mess We're In Without Going Crazy. You could call it that, or you could call Awakening with Our World, or you could call it Our World Ourselves, or find some phrase that you like. You don't need to if people get together, they'll find out, and you can tell them about transition.
Yeah.
The Transition Town movement.
Right. Thank you, Joanna. That's helpful.
Good luck. Yeah, you deserve to have some people who with whom you can link arms and tackle this together. I grew up in New York City, so I know how anonymous you can get, and people feel anonymous. And so when you can, just getting a small group together can be a great triumph.
I wanted to turn to Janice now, Janice Rouse.
Joanna, this is Janice from Orlando, the person who put hands on you in Roe, Polly's friend.
Hi, Janice.
I'm so delighted to hear your voice and to be part of this community, and I want to just address the young woman that spoke from New York City. I lived in New York my whole life, and what Joanna says is correct, and there are many awakening dreamer people there who will be happy to come together with you once you put out the word in that network to start thinking about transition towns. And if you want, I don't know how to figure this out because I don't understand this web thing, but if you contact me, I can give you at least 10 people in New York who would be happy to talk to you. But that's not what I wanted to ask. I didn't even want to ask anything. I wanted to say that the body, everybody's bodies right now are experiencing this epidemic of adrenal fatigue. And I think it's because the despair work has been seen as personal pathology instead of recognizing that it isn't personal pathology, and that what you have given, Joanna, in naming it as a collective grief is so important, because people are going off and getting medication. They're often doing all these things because they don't know what to do to deal with this huge onslaught that's coming to their psyches and their bodies. And I want to just suggest that these practices have to be embodied practices, practices that allow the emotions in the physical body to express the grief and the pain and the rage, and that the work and the work that reconnects, the truth mandala, all that phenomenal resource is what brings it all together. And so I just want to speak to the physical body, that our bodies are bleeding right now. We're all feeling the effect of time being sped up. We're all feeling the beauty of being able to have a web seminar where I can hear someone from New Zealand. I mean, how amazing is that? And at the same time, people's lives are so overloaded. So I just want to speak as a person who works on people's bodies, that this is a collective grief, and it needs to be held in that context so that we don't go into isolation and think that if we don't get to the psychopharmacologist to get our meds, we're going to not deal with it. So
I'm so glad to hear you, Janice. I so well remember your hands on my body up at Roe. And that, Lisa, so when we bring a little group together, we should be sure to bring some body workers to join us.
I really believe that a lot of people that have found their way to both the Work That Reconnects and Pachamama are body people, because we've been experiencing this in the clients that we work with. And I teach yoga here in Orlando as sometimes 5 days a week. And a lot of the time, the work that needs to happen is exactly what you just said. You know, how do we handle the mess we're in? We need to find ground. We need to find center. We need to find breath. And that is a huge, huge part of bringing us together, a huge part. And I just want to speak that.
That directly addresses, too, what Aaron brought out about the scapegoating and blaming, that
Yes.
Our fear can get really toxic when we try to escape from our bodies.
Right, right. And I actually think that because we are in a pretty dissociated culture right now, if we don't go into the bodies, we're going to turn against each other because we don't know that we're disembodied. I mean, that's the nature of the insanity that we're in, is that it creates dissociation, and dissociation creates this head culture. And it is the only way that we're going to come together, is if we understand that what the practices that you're offering us are embodied practices. And so we need to look in each other's eyes. We need to hold each other's hands. We need to feel each other's heartbeat. And just like the milling exercise, I've now been I don't know what the right word is, greatly, I've witnessed now the milling exercise 5 times in the last month, and I see people just looking at each other's eyes and just weeping. And it's
and that is
I don't
a
know how
liberation.
Truly.
That's a liberation from the prison cell of the isolated ego.
Right. So I want to say thank you, and I want to remind everybody that's on this call that you all have bodies. You need to take care of them. You need to not let yourselves fall into that, I'm too busy to go and take a walk, or I'm too busy to have a bike ride, or I'm too busy to take a hot bath. So this is a body worker speaking to you from Orlando, Florida, where we have a very thriving transition culture beginning to emerge, thanks to some wonderful leaders here.
Wow.
Bravo.
Thank you, Janice. And I wanted to where did Cindy? There, Cindy Poppin. You had a question or comment?
Yes, my name is Fran Levin. I'm here with Cindy. And, first, thank you. And thank you, Joanna, for all you shared. And I do want to say that I was just on a series of phone calls with Barbara Marks Hubbard, and the theme was Our Crisis is a Birth. And I think with all the despair we're looking at, it helps me so much to see something emerging. And I know that there are so many groups now that are talking about a new consciousness that is happening now. And a phone call I was on yesterday was the Gulf Call to Sacred Action, putting that disaster in a new context, and that was really, really so helpful and so beautiful. And there's still another call that people could participate in. And one website they mentioned is evolutionaryleaders.net. And Joanna, you're certainly one of the evolutionary leaders. And my thing has always been to get groups to connect with each other. And I'm sure that is happening, that we will give birth to a whole new world pretty soon. But thank you again.
Thank you, Cindy. Yes, our crisis is a birth. And it's agonizing because we are caught in uncertainty now. Anybody who's had a baby, gone through childbirth, particularly without drugs, can know as I did that you think you can't make it. You think that you're going to break apart. And this is what's needed for the new to come through. Of course, for us now, we have an added uncertainty because, as David Corton says, the great turning isn't the only thing that's happening. There's also the great unraveling. And they're intimately related, and there's no way that we now, in July 2010, can be sure, can be confident which is going to carry through. How will this story play out? And it's good to remember that this uncertainty is something that can bring forth our creativity and our strength, our courage. That if we knew, we wouldn't have this tremendous pressure to creativity and courage. It's that uncertainty. So I am learning to make friends with that, and one of the rewards of it, of course, is the solidarity that I find with other people who are facing it too.
Thank you, Joanna. And I wanted to invite others, if they wanted to put up their hands. You press *1 on your phone, and we can see it on a screen here, and we'll call on you. So back to the folks in Berkeley. Rains?
Yes, we now have Lawrence with a question.
Hi, Joanna. Lawrence in Berkeley. I'm glad that people are talking about embodiment, because I find that when you talk about solidarity and community with people, you usually get a lot of ideological arguments. But when you enact solidarity and community, especially through physical work, through collective physical work, nobody argues about it. What we're doing here is we have a thing called Neighborhood Vegetables, where we bring people together to help out each other's gardens. We have garden work parties, and people work together and they eat together and play music and laugh and have a good time. And nobody talks about cooperation. We experience it. It doesn't have to be gardening. It can be anything. It can be, child care. It can be cleanup, anything at all. But I find that when people say thanks for organizing this, I tell them if I didn't do it, I would just have to go crazy by looking at the newspapers. But as long as I'm doing something positive, everything is okay. I don't need grief work.
Lawrence? Hello?
Yes.
What's your phone number?
Okay. It's 510
Yeah.
540
Uh-huh.
1975. 1975, the year the Vietnam War ended.
I want to join your Neighborhood Vegetables.
Okay, what's your number?
Is there a website that she can go to?
Not a website, I said, but we will get.
It's in the phone book.
My name.
It's her name.
Hers is.
Oh, okay. Good. Are you going to be back in Berkeley soon?
What? So remember I mentioned, can you hear me?
Yes.
This movement in Sri Lanka, which is the largest community nonprofit organization in that republic, I came to believe after working with them for a year that their key to their success was they started with family gatherings where people could speak the truth of their experience, but they came together in order to do a piece of physical work. What drew them together, and that was like magic.
Yeah.
And the very name of the movement, Sarvodaya Shramadana, means everybody wakes up by working together. And whether they would be making a garden or building a roof for a school or digging public latrines or clearing out an irrigation canal, people working together of all ages and then sharing food together had released some energy that convinced people that they could take charge of their lives.
Yes. I understand that in New York City, there are people who go upstate to work on a farm and they pay $100 a day in order to do the work. We do it here for free.
Hello?
Yeah?
That's it.
Okay, that's it. Let's get together, Joanna. I'll call you up or you can call me.
Okay, good.
Good.
Any other questions or comments for Joanna? And that you press 1 on your keypad, and we can see it. And we have Maggie. We're going to try Maggie again. Maggie, go ahead. Maggie? Maggie, maybe your phone is on mute, so why don't you experiment with that?
Mm-hmm.
And are there any others? Joanna, going back to sort of some of the email questions that we received, I know that I saw Joanne brought up a point about doing the work that we're suited for, the work that's really coming from our nature, rather than doing work that is better for someone else to do, and being comfortable with that, trusting that others will do that part of it. Do you have anything to say to that?
Well, it really keeps us from infighting with our colleagues over a chosen approach that we might find, both the target or the approach. There's an awful lot of, we've all been deeply conditioned by the competition bred by the patriarchy and the industrial growth society, the cowboy mentality, the win-lose that we have the answer, we're going to be the saviors of the world, and it can disguise, that competition can be disguised. As in do-goodism, but so I find that being great, looking at anybody and being grateful for the fact that they're showing up at all, and looking to see what are the gifts that they have for you. There's some meditation practices that we use interactively in the Work That Reconnects that are marvelously powerful and fun too, and that you can be use in a group or use in your own mind as you're interacting with people, that juice you up with the realization that you're helping to actualize the living web of life, and that this person is going to be part of it, whether independently of what you make them do. So that a lightness of spirit can be a great blessing in this work. That you don't have to be the know-it-all, that you can actually see the beauty of don't know mind, that you can get people together to say, I don't know how to relate to this. That's what people respond to. A natural, buoyant humility in which you're caring for life and for all beings becomes quite transparent, and you give room for other people to know things and to bring forth answers. There's a practice that we call learning to see each other. That's on my website too. A lot of these are on my website, and I'll leave them up for a while if you want to use them, and that are tremendous blessings for seeing the power, because they remind us that we have one great asset as humans in this time, as humans, period, and that is that we can choose. We can choose where we put our mind. That's fantastic. And we can choose where we direct our intentions. That's fantastic. So let that be what we take immense pleasure and gratitude in, and not needing to see ourselves recruiting vast armies of people at our command.
Thank you. I love that term, buoyant humility. That's wonderful. And I wanted to turn it to Jim Barton and then Richard, and then we'll wind up. Jim?
Hi, this is Jim, and you can hear me, right?
Yes.
And it may be that the last question and response handled what I was going to say. I feel this interplay between the very local and personal. Yesterday I planted more tomatoes in my life than I ever had, 20. And the global. There's something I like about the 350 action last October 24th, where people in 52 locations all around the world did roughly the same thing at the same time to express their concern about climate. So that's a tension I think about in my mind, valuing both of them and not saying that one is clearly the right way or the other. So maybe that you just answered that in the last response. Thanks.
Well, it's nice that you bring up what is really a kind of huge spectrum that we all are living in all the time, which is local, the people we see face to face, our communities, our families, our workplace, and the planet itself. We're finding our feet in a planetary era where we can see and learn what's happening elsewhere. I was deeply moved and exhilarated. I almost cried with joy watching some of those 350 displays from around the world, Jim. And so I don't see it as attention. I see it as mutually like two faces of our opportunity now. And what made me cry when I looked at people in Zanzibar or what have you, and people in Ohio, and school children, and people on beaches and in offices and parking lots, was the fact that they were local and their locality was part of my planet. So it was a wonderful blessing exercise for the spirit, and making so conscious to me what Paul Hawken calls blessed unrest, this largest social movement in human history. It's happening, but the thing is, it's not being covered by the corporate-controlled media, but we can more and more make it connected through imaginatively too. I'm going to be trying to hold you close. I'd sure like to see your faces, but now I know you exist, you folks.
Thank you, Joanne. I wanted to turn to Richard and then Joanne.
Hi. I wanted to share that in the last few years, maybe 4 or 5 years, what was a very moving revelation for what informs my life and my actions and my thinking and my being has been that the deepening of the capacity of feeling, and yes, of feeling the pain and the difficulties and the shadow, if you so will, the dark, deepening that, opening to that, is directly related and mutually influencing each other, of also feeling the shining and the light and the beautiful joy and the nourishing. Both go together and deepen together. It has been making a big impact in my life. And I want to thank everybody who has been on this call and sharing so wonderfully.
Well, I bow to that. That has been an unfolding realization in my life as well, Richard. And there are many times in doing the work that reconnects, whether it's in the context of transition towns or Awakening the Dreamer or so many other marvelous aspects of the blessed unrest, that I thought, how lucky. What can account for my good fortune that I could, through no virtue of my own, be allowed to walk into the size and beauty of the human heart. It's like an unfolding revelation. And it is a blessing, and I hear that in your voice, Richard. Thank you.
Wanted to turn to Joanne.
Hi, this is Joanne in Los Angeles, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for your comments about intention. I tend to be a person who is always in the doing, and so your reminders of intention were very powerful to me. I put up my hand at the point where you were talking about the 350 movement. So this goes back to the doing thing. Just to remind everybody that this October 10th, they're having a global work day, and it struck me that it's a perfect time for each of our communities to experiment with what you were talking about in Sri Lanka, where we just create the space for people to do work together and to presence their emotions together and to connect with people and share food. We could just do that very simply and be part of something very global on that day.
Wonderful. What is your organization?
I'm with Transition Los Angeles.
Oh, mm-hmm. And you're doing a global work day?
No, 350.org is doing. They're doing a global work day on 10/10/10, October 10th, 2010.
Okay.
So they're trying to get local communities all over the world to be doing local work projects, and it just strikes me that what you're talking about in Sri Lanka is just the perfect thing for us to be doing on a very small local scale.
And I know nothing that brings people from diverse backgrounds, ethnic and economic, of all backgrounds together as much as a building, physical, working with your hands task.
Thanks for the reminder of that, Joanne. And there's no more hands up. So I'm going to see if Joanna, if you wanted, oops, we just got one more hand. And after this, Joanna, you can, if you have any closing remarks for us, and we'll just do a wrap up and sort of open up all the mics for people to give a shout out to you. So, but first to Jane.
Hi, it's Jane in Cowichan Bay in British Columbia. And I just wanted to follow up on the 10-10-10 Global Work Party, just because it brings together the two arms of the social action and the holding actions and the building community, because it's aimed at all our world leaders who are going to be in Mexico in December talking about climate change. And it's basically a global action to set an example, to say that we're doing the work. Why don't you please get down to doing the work that is necessary for the planet?
Yeah, I like that. You know, one of the things that made the customs that grew up around work parties, and, you know, I've been citing Sri Lanka, but actually in every culture we have our traditions of that, in particularly in our pre-industrial times. We had the quilting bees and the corn huskings and the barn raisings. We always accompanied it by with sharing food. And what is magical also is sharing music and art and words and prayer, or any, you know, sharing some of our cultural wealth as well as we share food.
Thank you, Joanna. And at this point, we're going sort of to the closing, and just wanted to invite you, if you did have any other remarks that you'd like to share with us.
You're talking to me? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I get back to this question of how our capacity for choice is illumined more clearly than ever at this moment in our history. And I have found it with a colleague of mine in England, as we're working together, the approach we're taking in this publication is looking at three stories that we can choose from. These are stories of our time. And we can invite ourselves and our communities, the people we meet, to see that we don't have to persuade people. The sky is falling and you better get with the transition to post-petroleum or anything. But if you present, here, there are 3 stories going on now, and you can choose which one to get behind. The first story that most people believe in is business as usual. That is, we can repair, continue trying to find fresh oil at ever greater expense and repair the system and keep on going and shore up the banks and the military or what have you. And that's what most politicians and corporations believe in, and most people. Business as usual, the ongoing story, the keep up the American dream, and even if it's tattered. And the next story is the great unraveling. And that's what more and more people, environmentalists particularly, are seeing. And activists the world over, when you look under the carpet a little bit, this threadbare carpet of business as usual, you see this ghastly unraveling of living systems in an irreversible way. Because once an extinction happens of a culture, a language, a life form, it's forever. And so that great unraveling is present in many psyches now. And it's making people quietly crazy. But there's a third choice, a third story, and that is the great turning. That this moment in history, this is looking back from the future, we can see something amazing, if there is going to be a future, an amazing happening in the first 2 decades of the 3rd millennium. And to see that we can, again and again, each day, we make that choice in our lives. And the horror that's being presented to us in the Gulf of Mexico, and the response of those in power, the inadequacy of that response. We can bear that when we can see, well, which story do I want to get behind? And more, transition towns, and each of you in the activities and the motivation that's even brought you to this phone call is you are casting a vote for, you're putting in your lives in the realization of the 3rd story, realizing it's going on and making it real. And there are forces at your side, evolutionary forces coming through you, the life that is pumping your heart, that is breathing through your lungs, that life, the gift of our planet, over all these millennia, it wants to go on, and you're on the side of life. So we can nourish that choice in ourselves and each other in the littlest of ways every day. And I know that this phone call has nourished my intention, and I feel the solidarity with you, even though I don't see your faces.
Oh, Joanna, thank you so much for joining us. And I wanted to remind people that there's 2 more wonderful people in this series, this Heart and Soul series. Traithan Heckman will be doing a call on July 21st, same time. And then Kit Miller, who I know you know, Joanna, will be doing this on August 18th. And rich, wonderful things that they can both bring to our ever growing community of people doing this amazing work.
Those times again. So Traithan is on what day?
He's on July 21st.
And Kit is
August 18th.
Okay.
Yes. And I wanted just to remind people as well that we try to offer as many webinars and calls as possible, and that information's on our website, transitionus.org. We also offer a transition training. I know there's some transition trainers on the call today, 2-day training, and just really look forward to hearing from all of you how we can support this work better in the position we're in here at Transition US. Ideas, all of that very helpful to us. We need to just really hear what could make it work better for you. If we can accommodate that, we certainly will.